Ever wish you could just like download fluency in another language?
Yeah.
Like an app or something.
Uh-huh. Wouldn't that be nice?
Seriously. But while we're not quite there yet, AI is starting to make some pretty big waves in language learning, especially in Middle French immersion programs. We're actually diving into a couple of sources today that deal with this.
Yeah, we've got a research paper, The Role and Significance of Computer-Assisted Learning in Middle French Immersion Programs.
A bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, I was going to say, a little bit wordy, but very interesting stuff.
And this other source, we have a conceptual framework for literature review.
Which, I have to say, sounds way more intimidating than it actually is.
Right. Not exactly the most listener-friendly title.
It really is more like a visual guide to a ton of research on language learning. They actually use color coding to make all the connections clear.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So we've got this cutting-edge research on AI, plus like a bird's eye view of the whole field.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, French immersion itself isn't new, so this research is building on decades of work.
Yeah, it's not just some like trendy new thing.
Right. In fact, the research paper actually mentions studies on learning environments going all the way back to like the 1980s.
Wow. Okay, so researchers have been digging into this for a while. Before we go any further, can we just like define French immersion? Is it just a fancy way of saying French class?
It's definitely way more than that. It's about creating an environment where you're not just learning about the language, you're actually living in it as much as possible.
So less about like memorizing verb conjugations and more about actually like thinking in French.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research on AI so fascinating. It gets at whether technology can actually help create that immersive experience in new ways.
I see, I see. Okay, so that's where this conceptual framework comes in, right? Like the bridge between all this past research and the stuff that's happening with AI now.
Exactly. It takes all of that research and organizes it around two big themes. One is computer-assisted language learning, which is usually called CAL.
Okay, carry out. Got it.
And the other theme is linguistic diversity. And like I said, they use this color coding to show how different studies relate to each other. So for example, anything about TAL is highlighted green.
Oh.
Linguistic diversity is purple. And then they have even more colors for all the subthemes.
So it's like if you were scrolling through this research map on a tablet, you could instantly see, okay, this study on personalized feedback, that's part of the whole Kale world.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. It's like having your own like personalized guide to this entire field. So this is all super interesting, but I think it's time to get down to like the nitty gritty here.
Right to it.
What is this research paper actually trying to find out?
Well, they want to know how these AI language apps, the ones, are actually affecting what students are learning in these Middle French immersion programs.
Okay, so how do they even like measure that? What are they looking at specifically?
So they're looking at what are called literacy learning outcomes. So we're not just talking about like, being able to order a croissant in Paris.
Right.
It's about how well these students are developing their reading and writing skills.
Okay.
In both French and in their first language, which is important too.
Yeah, because they're still learning like everything else at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And they were specifically looking at younger students, which is interesting.
Oh, okay. So not like high schoolers who are already kind of,
Right. This research was focused on those early elementary years, which everyone knows are so important for developing those fundamental literacy skills.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the verdict? Are AI language apps about to make everyone bilingual?
Well, not so fast. It's a little more complicated than that, I would say.
Okay.
The research shows that there's huge potential there, but it's not as easy as just like handing every kid an iPad with Duolingo and calling it a day, you know?
Right. There's got to be more to it than that.
Exactly. There are a lot more nuances.
Okay, so walk me through it then. Like, what are some of the biggest takeaways from this research? What are they finding?
So one of the big things, and this isn't just this study, it's pretty consistent across the board. One of the biggest factors is actually how fluent the student is in both their first language and the language that they're learning.
That made sense.
Right. So if they already have a strong foundation in their native language.
It's like they're building on a solid base.
Yeah. It's like building a house. You need a good foundation.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is that it affects other subjects too, like even math.
Really?
Yeah. It's all about, those underlying skills, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to solve a word problem and you're struggling just to like decode the language.
Yeah, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how good you are at math, you're going to hit a wall.
Okay, so 2 languages, double the brain power. That's a good takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
But where does the whole AI piece fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things get really, really interesting, I think. Because the research is showing that AI, specifically these call tools, remember those,
Yeah.
could be really, really effective.
Okay.
Like game changers. And I think one of the reasons, think about it, they can provide personalized feedback,
Oh,
which is something that's like really hard to do in a classroom setting, right?
yeah, for sure. Especially with a lot of different like learning levels.
Exactly. And these tools, they can adapt like as you're working. So if you're making the same mistake over and over again, it can adjust to that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It's way more than a textbook.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this could be really helpful for creating that whole immersive experience. But I feel like there's always a but.
Well, you're right. The research does make it clear that it's not just about throwing technology at the problem, right?
It's not just going to like magically solve everything.
Right. It's not about replacing teachers with robots or anything like that.
It's got to be more about like giving teachers more tools.
Yes, exactly. And this is a big thing, teacher training.
Okay.
The research really emphasizes that. Teachers need to know how to actually use these AI tools effectively.
To make it work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to integrate them into what they're already doing in the classroom, right? And to understand like what the limitations are, because technology can be great, but...
It's only as good as the person using it.
Exactly. You got it.
So it sounds like we're still kind of figuring all of this out, like how to use AI effectively in the classroom.
Absolutely. And it's more than just the how, right? It also comes down to access.
Oh, right, right. Not every student has a computer or tablet at home.
Exactly. And the research actually talks about this. They call it the technology divide.
Interesting.
And they're finding that it can really impact how much students actually get out of using these tools. Like if a student doesn't have good internet access at home, or maybe they don't have the same digital skills.
It's not a level playing field.
Exactly. So if we really want AI to help all students, not just some, we have to figure out this whole access thing.
For sure. For sure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the history of French immersion, the ins and outs of AI, and even some of the bigger picture issues like access and equity.
It's a lot to think about, and it's really just the beginning. This research is so new.
Oh, so there are more questions than answers right now.
Absolutely. For example, we've talked about how these tools help with things like reading and writing, but what about the long-term effects?
Like down the road?
Yeah, exactly. Like how does using these tools affect a student's motivation? Do they actually end up liking languages more? What about their understanding of different cultures?
It's like we need to zoom out a bit. Look at the bigger picture.
Right. We need more research on that for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's also the question of how we use this technology responsibly. I mean, how do we make sure these tools are available to all students? How do we train teachers to use them in a way that actually benefits everyone?
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's how we use it that really matters.
100%. And that's what's so interesting about this whole conversation. It's bigger than just the classroom.
Yeah.
It involves parents, policymakers, really all of us.
So it's not as simple as like AI is going to replace teachers or something.
Definitely not. At least not anytime soon.
Okay, good to know. So what do we learn then?
I think the biggest takeaway is that AI has the potential to make learning more engaging, more personalized, but we need to be thoughtful about it. We have to address these questions of access, of equity, of how to actually use these tools effectively.
It all comes back to that human element, doesn't it?
Exactly. Technology is a tool. It's only as good as the humans using it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been a really fascinating deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy these conversations.